Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Signals from the Batcave. I am Nok.
And I'm Rah.
And today we are talking about episode 11, season 2 of Gotham, known as Worse Than a Crime. What'd you think?
It's the mid-season finale, so we won't get another episode, I think, till, almost middle to end of February, so it's taking almost a 3-month break. As far as, leaving you wanting more, I don't think it did its job as a cliffhanger. I mean, I'm not really... The way it did everything it was supposed to do. It tied up all the first half of this season's loose ends.
Right.
But it didn't really leave anything to whet the appetite for next half of the season. And I think it's because there's a lot of stuff on the boilerplate for the back half of this season, too. I mean, I think the Order of Dumas isn't really settled yet, just because of the way it ended. And we know that Court of Owls is coming. We know Mad Hatter's coming.
Right. Clayface is coming.
Clayface. So there's a lot coming down the pike. The whole Indian Hill thing has got to be resolved. That's been alluded to a couple of times in this season.
Right.
So, in terms of getting people to want to come back, traditional cliffhanger-wise, I think it fell a little short.
But like you said, it wrapped up the first half of the season.
Right.
The second half of the season, we don't know. Speculations are it's going to be Court of Owls, but again, we don't know.
Right. So. The only other problem I had too with it, in terms of wrapping up stuff, was they spent 2 or 3 episodes with the Court of Dumas.
Yep.
And they kind of went down like some bitches.
Yeah, that kind of ended abruptly.
Yeah.
It took 2 episodes, but out of 11, 2 episodes out of 11, it kind of wrapped up quickly.
Yeah, they were set up to be sort of this big zealotous crew that the city had to really be afraid of. But that whole thing, the conflict resolution, was pretty much done in maybe 30 seconds.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, there was a lot of guns involved, but I would think that for folks who specialize in knife work, that they would not just leap into the barrels of guns.
Right.
There would be some artful dodging or some guys pouring out of the side rooms, but none of that happened. It kind of just all went down like bitches.
Right, and they're also trained to not feel pain, so getting shot really shouldn't bother them as long as they don't get shot in the face.
Right.
So.
Well, I think probably for normal people getting shot, there would be the shock. I mean, they'd still feel it. I mean, if your femur gets broken by a bullet passing through your leg, they may not feel it, but that leg, for all intents and purposes, is useless.
Right.
Because you can't put any weight on it; it'll just collapse under itself. So I think that part of it makes sense for the show.
But there was a guy before that went after Gordon.
Yeah.
He got shot twice in the stomach. He grunted a little bit,
yeah,
but he still stood up and walked away in front of a truck.
Yeah.
So, with that many people and that many guns going off, it's going to be hard to pinpoint your accuracy with a firearm.
Yeah.
But they should still be able to get up and keep going.
Right. I mean, and they were still in close quarters fighting.
Right.
Once Galvin and his sister and Silver left. I mean, the scene ends with them close quarter fighting with a couple of guys. So a couple of guys did make it to them. But no one's aiming shots in that type of scene. I mean, it's just a mass of robes and bodies getting shot at. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I think they went down a little too easy for people who live in the modern world where there's firearms, and they need to develop tactics to be able to maintain their old world aesthetic of knives.
Right.
So I mean, they went down a little too easily. But
yes.
I don't know. I think once again though, the things in terms of that it did really well. Still really well acted.
Yes.
I think even Silver, came out as more than just an evil character in the episode. I mean, she was bad, but then she had some kind of redemptive quality to her towards the end when she speaks out and saves Bruce's life.
Right.
Even the sister, who was basically, the odd job, the Jaws, the Bond villain henchman for Galvin during the whole season came around.
And that was a great fight between Galvin's sister and Alfred. It really was a good fight. Good choreography and everything. Yeah. I mean, the whip was CG.
Right.
And you could tell it was CG, but it was still good choreography between those two.
Yeah, that was in the episode before. That wasn't in this episode. Because in this episode, he was in recovery because he had jumped into the back of the dump truck.
Right.
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
The garbage truck, I should say.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's all right.
Behind.
But that's part of the whole thing of her, like, sort of coming around. I mean, even in the episode just before this, she was more of a tool,
right,
of his, as opposed to, her own person.
Right.
But she started like coming around when he started treating Barbara kind of like meat. Yeah. And she didn't like that too much.
Right.
And then, it sort of culminated at the end of this episode with when she tried to save Silver from him. So that was pretty good.
Yeah. Now, the ending, I was not a fan of. The ending, the last 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah.
I thought they could have handled that character, spoilers, I guess, Mr. Freeze, in a different way.
But it's been a week, so I think we could probably go into it.
Okay.
So
spoilers.
Yeah.
Week after.
I mean, by now everyone's probably read the articles and weighed in those who had seen it on the controversial part of the end, as you alluded to, that Mr. Freeze makes an appearance. I mean, there's an opening graphic where closing graphic where it always closes, where it has Gotham and it sort of like comes at you, and normally it just goes to credits after that. But as the logo starts coming towards you, ice starts to form over it, and there's like the crack of ice, like something getting really, really cold. The sound it makes when something gets really, really cold. And it cuts to a short scene where we see a guy running from someone, and he's desperate to escape. He's trying locked doors, looking for places to hide. He thinks he finds a place to hide, and then we hear like someone approaching a gate that he crawled under. You hear the freezing gun sound, and then a snap, and then you see like a person walking through the alley looking for this guy that's running, and he's got sort of like a quilted bluish silver suit on, which we presume is protect him from cold. He's got goggles, and he's carrying a large tank and a pretty rudimentary silver weapon in that looks like could potentially be Freeze's cold gun. And I say rudimentary because it's very unrefined. Yeah. There's like tubes coming out of it. It doesn't look like it could. If you fell on it wrong, it looked like it wouldn't work.
Right. It looks like first generation.
It's a
Freeze
prototype.
Gun.
Yeah. So why don't you go? And then he basically finds the guy, and the guy is begging for his life, and then he shoots it at him, and then like ice.
Fade to black.
Well, no, ice builds up all around the corner edges of the screen, and then it comes over to fill the entire screen, and then becomes opaque, and then we go to the credits.
Right.
So after his screams die out.
Right.
So okay, then you can explain what your problem is then.
My problem is the way that they handled Victor Freeze. Okay, I'll give you the fact that it's
we don't know anything.
Weapon.
We don't. They don't know anything. So just come out with what you said. We don't know because we talked about this before off mic.
Right.
So why don't you just come out with what you said? That way we can have that discussion right here.
I would have rather seen Victor Freeze in a laboratory or some other setting outside of him dolled up in the Mr. Freeze outfit with the cold gun. Because at this point in time, he should still be Dr. Victor Freeze trying to save his wife Nora's life with cryogenics. That's my opinion.
Okay, well, like we had discussed off mic before, I mean, I think what happens a lot of times, especially when we get these really short snippets where we see little bits, and Sam's guilty of this too with a lot of his problems, and I'm just alluding to with the problems with the show, and I'm alluding to the whole Jerome fiasco. We don't know that that's Victor Freeze. We don't know anything about that character at all. We know that in the second half of this season 2 that we're going to get an introduction to Victor Freeze, but way back in season 1, the Scarecrow was supposed to show up, and it ended up being Jonathan Crane really young, and his dad working on a fear reducing toxin.
And that's the way I enjoyed that version of Jonathan Crane and his father.
Yeah.
It gave light into Jonathan Crane's boyhood, his mindset, what happened to him, why he chose the Scarecrow.
But that's the thing. It's like we still didn't get any Scarecrow. We get these allusions from the writers saying they're going to do homage, but there was no Scarecrow character even after we go to the end of that episode and he sees the Scarecrow thing terrorize him, But there's still no Scarecrow. That what we saw during the mid-season break is not Mr. Freeze. It's not even. We're not even sure if that's even Victor Freeze, because of the prototype weapon that we see. We don't, because of the fact that he's protecting himself, which was a point that you made. Appears to be protecting himself from the cold, not keeping it as close to him as possible. We get no sense that is Freeze. We know it's someone with a Freeze gun, but some of the things that we kicked around was it could be an apprentice. It could be someone in the lab he's working in, someone with some other agenda of their own, other than what he wants. So I think what happens with this type of show, because it has such a huge mythology behind it, and people hope so much that certain things happen that they fall into this pit, like Psalm and even Wave for Man of Steel, that they want so much to have these characters, but when they're not given to them, it's disappointment. And that's because the show can't be what you want it to be. It's got to be what it wants to be. And I would actually be shocked if that is the Victor Freeze character.
I'm fine with them giving me the characters, but don't give me the Batman characters. Give me young Bruce Wayne characters. Right. Show me the people before they turned into the villains or the heroes, or who they became after Batman shows up.
So you didn't get Victor Freeze in that.
We don't know it's not Victor Freeze.
Right.
It's possibly Victor Freeze in the a cold protective outfit.
Right.
And he could be testing a prototype weapon.
Yeah.
Or he's testing a theory on freezing the human body.
But what I'm saying now, because you can't be disappointed in what they gave you because you don't know what they gave you. You see what I'm saying? You can't. If it's not Victor Freeze, or if it is Victor Freeze, you can't be disappointed in what they give you.
If the headline says Victor Freeze is coming to Gotham, I expect Victor Freeze. If they say Mr. Freeze is coming to Gotham, I expect Mr. Freeze in the cold outfit, ice running through his veins, stuck dead black heart, and Nora sitting in some cryo freezer.
But you got none of that. They said none of that. They said somewhere in season 2 he will make an appearance. But in that snippet, that little 2-minute snippet, nowhere is that indicated. Because nowhere in there is it indicated that he's a guy in a lab coat, that he's a guy who has to be kept at 0 degrees Celsius. Nowhere in there did it show that.
This goes back to the whole Man of Steel was not a Superman thing.
Right.
If you have Mr. Freeze in a cold outfit with a freeze gun,
but you don't have that.
It's Mr. Freeze.
But you don't have that. That's what I'm saying now.
If you have
they did not present that to you at all.
You have a guy in a protective outfit with a freeze gun, freezing people. It's Mr. fucking Freeze.
No, it's not. Because it's very possible that it could be a lab assistant with his own agenda. It's very possible it can be his jealous brother who has a gambling problem and that's his bookie. It can be any of those things because they're presenting you with their life before that. So all those possibilities are there. Just the same way that Jerome wasn't the Joker. Even though he was a psychotic character that laughed, he was not the Joker. And
he
just
was a psychotic character that portrayed the Joker, did all of the Joker characteristics.
See, no.
He might have not been called the Joker, but he portrayed Joker characteristics.
He was a psychotic that laughed a lot.
Barbara also, towards the end of her run, portrayed Joker characteristics.
Right. So does that mean that she was a template for the Joker?
Possibly.
It's very possible, but again, it goes back to that thing, like they're giving you these little bits of things And as a viewer, and this is also for anybody who watches the show, if you leap to those conclusions and you're disappointed that you didn't get it, you leapt. You leapt as the viewer.
I saw a guy in a protective outfit with a freeze gun freezing somebody just because my mindset says, hey, that should be Mr. Freeze.
It's like Owlman and Batman.
Not jumping anywhere. I'm seeing a guy that's portraying Mr. Freeze. That's where my mind's going to go.
Yeah,
it's a guy in a protective outfit with a freeze gun freezing people.
But by that same token, Night Owl, Moon Knight, Owlman, and Batman, they're all guys that wear suits that portray night creatures, except for maybe Moon Knight. He's thrown in there because he uses an aerodynamic projectile that he uses to knock out guys with.
More or less.
They're all like fighting close combat kind of guys.
Yep.
They're all like grappling hook kind of guys.
Yep.
But they couldn't be more different than, an apple and an orange. By that same token, anybody that throws on a suit is Superman and flies as Superman.
If he has a blue and red outfit with a giant S on his chest, it's either Superman or Bizarro.
Okay. But anybody who's dressed in red and blue that flies and has invulnerability is not Superman.
Leaps tall buildings in a single
That's my point.
Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive.
Right.
It's fucking Superman. If his name is Kal-El, a.k.a. Clark Kent, it's Superman.
Yeah, but once again, Owlman, and then, Night Owl and Batman are not the same characters. So just because we see a guy with a cold gun doesn't mean that he can't be Captain Cold, which is the same, which is a different universe, I think.
No,
it's the same universe. Could be Captain Cold.
If he was wearing a parka and sunglasses,
he had a hooded coat on.
Okay.
And goggles.
So
there's not an argument for Captain Cold. Then that actually makes more sense.
It's Captain Cold and or Victor Freeze.
Because then you have this is even better because it makes more sense that it's Captain Cold because innately he's a criminal. So we would more likely waste some guy than a Victor Freeze at this time, who is really just working on a way to save his wife. It's less likely that Victor Freeze would be killing people, and more likely that Captain Cold would come to Gotham because he's heard of this new technology and want to have an edge over the average criminal and cop. That is more likely than us getting Mr. Freeze.
But then you'd be meddling with the Flash TV show's mythology.
That's true. We'd be going outside of traditional Gotham.
And I believe Guggenheim has all of those shows under his belt. So I doubt that's going to happen.
I don't know if Flamingo is actually a Batman villain or if he's a DC Universe villain and thus is like moved between rogues galleries or not. But that may be something that we need to look up to at some point.
The Flash TV show has been pretty steadily using Flash villains, using the Flash's rogue gallery.
Right.
Arrow, on the other hand, has been using Batman villains.
Yes. But what I'm saying is Gotham had a villain that I wasn't terribly familiar with, but although I have seen in Batman comics, the Flamingo.
Yep.
So that's what I'm saying. We'll have to look this up and maybe do it again, do a talk next week on it. And whether or not the Flamingo is strictly a Gotham-central villain, or if he's one of those that sort of goes around between, like Deadshot,
Deadshot's another one that I'm kind of hazy on. I'm sure info's out there on his first appearance, but
because if Flamingo is strictly a Batman villain, then he makes total sense. But if he's just a generic DC Rogues Gallery villain, then it doesn't. Then they can totally, because he was in there, the door is open for them to just start pulling from whatever universe or whatever Rogues Galleries they want. So, I mean, right now we've only seen Batman villains, but they could be expanding. I mean, this is the rise of the villains.
I don't know, it comes up in Batman wikis, so
yeah.
let's find out.
I mean, that's That's the subtitle for this season is the rise of the villain. So could be other stuff. I don't know.
Tendency to his victims.
But I mean, that's the long and the short of it here. I mean, we haven't really given enough information to really. We know what's coming because of rumors, but we haven't been given a lot of information to know exactly what we're dealing with. And
Batman villain.
Is he a straight up Batman villain?
Yep.
Well, there you go. So far they haven't gone out and reached to other rogues galleries. So I don't know. Maybe it's a little far fetched to think it could be Captain Cold, but just from an aesthetic point of view,
you just want to try and talk your way out of this.
No, it's all based on evidence. I mean, they have not. There's not been a lick of dialogue to tell who it is. We are the ones jumping conclusions based on rumor and innuendo. So I mean, there's nothing that you can cite that says that that's Victor Fries. Just like the same thing, there's nothing that you can cite that says that we've gotten a Scarecrow villain yet. We haven't. There's no Scarecrow villain. All we have is a kid who may not ever recover from being injected by a fear-inducing toxin.
Right. We don't have the Scarecrow.
Right.
We have Jonathan Crane as a kid.
Right.
History states that Jonathan Crane grows up, becomes a psychiatrist,
right,
and becomes the Scarecrow.
Right.
History dictates that fill in the blank, grows up, becomes a thug, becomes the Red Hood,
right,
falls in a vat of acid, becomes the Joker.
Right.
This show is supposed to be a lead up to what these people become. So when I see people that are already established when Bruce Wayne is young as a Batman villain, that's what I have trouble with.
Yeah, because it's actually it'd be like one of the multiple worlds, like from Infinite Earths.
Right.
It's not the one we're used to. It's just the one that they're developing. I mean, hell, Gordon and Leslie Tompkins are together. And according to this last episode, they may be having a baby. That never fucking happened, but that's the way they're writing it. So, and Dent, there's no way Dent and Bruce are ever going to be, friends.
Are you sure that never happened?
I'm pretty sure that never happened.
Because he did have a child before. He had a son.
But not with Dr. Leslie Tompkins.
He had a son who wound up going crazy and slaughtering a bunch of people throughout Gotham.
Yeah, I know. That was the, what was that one? Black Hand.
Yeah.
That's a great graphic novel, by the way, for those of you interested. But I don't think that it was with Dr. Tompkins.
Jeff Loeb, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I just know he has an older son that nobody talks about.
Yeah.
He wound up going psychotic and getting put away, and then he comes out in Black Hand.
Yeah. So, I mean, where does Barbara Gordon come from at this point? We don't know. She may never even be a part of this.
Barbara King. Barbara Gordon comes from James's loins.
Yeah, well, that's what
Barbara King is a character, as far as I know, that Gotham came up with.
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't really know. So, I mean, they're doing their own thing, but I don't know. I thought as a show, I think it did pretty well, but to go on to the mid-season, it didn't really leave me with like a wow or like a like in previous episodes, like last year's. I think mid-season was when Bruce discovers the cave beneath his father's den. Right. I mean that was fucking huge. I mean it was out of place, but it was like, well, what is this? And it ends up leading to this whole season.
The one thing I can say about season is seeing a guy in a protective outfit with a cold gun, freezing people. Not saying it's Victor Fries, but I'm not saying it either.
Yeah,
is Victor Fries's technology is a stepping point for the Court of Owls.
Right.
That's the technology that they use to freeze their talons.
Right.
So they can have a mass amount of people frozen, laying in wait for the court to resurrect them and send them out into the world.
Well, here's another thing, too. Did we actually get the Firefly? I don't think so. We got a girl...
We got a Firefly,
that uses a flamethrower. Not very well, in a protective suit that had sort of bug eyes. But was she Firefly? Probably not. So, see, we're getting some things, but not a lot of things. Like, the Riddler isn't even the Riddler yet. He's only started to use riddles as a cover for the truth in this episode. But he's not the Riddler.
No, but the Penguin is...
He's probably
almost the Penguin.
He's almost
the closest one so far to being the actual character.
Yeah.
And that one I'm fine with because the Penguin should be already established, a quote-unquote business owner for the Iceberg Lounge.
Yeah. And not to mention it's well acted by him.
He does it well too.
Well, what we should do is we should leave it at this. We probably will touch on this a little bit in the Geek Yogurt podcast, but we can go round and round this topic, as everybody well knows if they've listened to us. So, but for now, I think we should probably wrap it up.
Yep, that's it for the Signals from the Batcave.